In our little town of Bayfield, Thursday nights were sacred, at least for the men. Every Thursday, rain or shine, a half-dozen trucks would line up outside the old brick building on First Street, the Veterans Hall. It wasn't fancy. 2 stories, a fading mural of a waving flag on the side, and a parking lot that cracked a little more every year. But for guys like me, it was a second home. 20 years ago, I helped hang the first frame inside that place. A photo of us, the local Gulf War boys, lined up outside our Humvees in the Kuwaiti sun, all dust and sweat and pride. Back then, I still had my hearing in both ears, 2 working knees, and no idea how fragile trust could be. My name's Terry Dobson, and until last year, I believed Thursday nights kept me sane. Turns out, they were the beginning of the end. My wife, Lorna, was never big on the hall. She used to call it my smoke and beer clubhouse, and she wasn't entirely wrong. The place always smelled like yesterday's ashtray and a tap that hadn't been cleaned right since '05. But it had history, brotherhood, stories you only told once you trusted the guy next to you. Lorna respected that, or so I thought. But sometime last spring, she started getting plans of her own. "I'm heading to bingo with Melanie," she said one Thursday as I buttoned my cleanest denim shirt. I glanced up. "Since when do you play bingo?" She smiled without blinking. "We've gone a couple times. Just something to do." The next Thursday, it was trivia night. Then book club. Then helping with a fundraiser. I didn't question it. We'd been married 22 years. Raised 2 kids. Shared 1 dog, 3 cars, and a mortgage that nearly killed us. If she wanted her space, she earned it. But by the 6th Thursday in a row, something started feeling off. It wasn't just the way she dressed, a little too polished for a community center or church basement. It was the way she left. Too fast, too light on her feet, and always with a vague, "Don't wait up" before the door shut. I told myself not to overthink it. Men like me, veterans, mechanics, straight shooters, we don't snoop. We don't pry. We give the benefit of the doubt, sometimes long after we shouldn't. And that's exactly what I did. Then came the new bartender. He was young, probably 23, if that. Name was Kyle. Moved here from Fargo after his cousin got him a job at the hall. The regulars didn't trust him yet. He didn't know the beer order by heart and had never served a Boilermaker without asking for ID. But Kyle was chatty. Too chatty. That Thursday, as he handed me a bud and a pack of salted peanuts, he grinned and said, "So, the commander and your wife, they always this tight?" I paused. "What?" He blinked. Realized his mistake. "I mean, no offense. I just see them laughing in the back room every week. I didn't know y'all were cool with that." I said nothing. Just tipped my bottle and walked off. The commander, Franklin Dale, 62, Vietnam vet, long-standing president of the hall, wore his medals like armor, his ego like a parade float. He was the kind of guy you didn't confront unless you were ready for a fight or a lawsuit. I'd known him for years, but never liked him. Too smooth. Too political. He could turn any toast into a campaign speech, and every handshake came with a photo op. Still, I never thought twice about him and Lorna, until Kyle said what he did. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lorna got home after 11. Claimed the fundraiser ran long. I nodded, pretending not to notice the faint trace of cologne that didn't belong to me. She slid into bed beside me, humming something under her breath. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The next Thursday, I didn't go to the hall. Told her I was helping Cliff with his truck alignment. Instead, I waited. Watched. Lorna left around 6:45, dressed like she was headed to a banquet. Heels. Lipstick. Hair curled in a way she hadn't bothered with since our anniversary. I waited 5 minutes, then grabbed my keys. Followed from a distance. Down Main, past the old hardware store, toward the hall. She parked in the back lot, a place not visible from the front entrance. I pulled in 3 minutes later, keeping the engine running. From my angle, I could see through the sliver between the side curtain and the window frame. Enough to catch movement. Laughter. I didn't see them kiss. Didn't need to. Her hand touched his shoulder. His hand touched her lower back. That was enough. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I played the fool a little longer. Smiled when she walked in late. Asked how the book club was going. Kept attending Thursday night poker. And every time, I watched a little more. Franklin stopped being careful. So did she. One night, I saw them step into the commander's office. The little room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a lock on the door that squeaked when it shut. They stayed in there for 15 minutes. When she came out, her blouse was buttoned wrong. By that point, I wasn't angry. I was cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your joints and never quite leaves. It was more than the cheating. It was the betrayal of where it happened. The hall was supposed to be ours. Mine. A place built on trust, service, loyalty. And they defiled it in the same room where we once folded flags. I started asking questions. Discreet ones. Talked to a couple of the older guys. Listened more than I spoke. A pattern emerged. Franklin was playing favorites. Ordering extra inventory no one asked for. Hiring friends of friends. Hosting side events that never made it to the budget ledger. One member, Ed Granger, said he'd brought it up to the board. Next thing he knew, his yearly dues got lost, and he was barred for non-payment. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just an affair. It was a rot. A con. And Lorna, she wasn't just his side piece. She was his shield. The hall's 20th anniversary gala was coming up. Biggest event of the year. Invitations printed. Local newspaper covering it. Commander Dale's speech already typed and rehearsed. And I'd just RSVP'd. Not as a guest. Not as a vet. But as the husband who had nothing left to lose. I never thought I'd become the kind of man who plotted in silence. I served 13 months in the Gulf under open sky. Drove supply trucks under mortar fire. Helped carry a friend's body out of the desert with the flag still clutched in his hand. And the one thing I swore, over and over again, was that I'd never lie to the men who had my back. But here I was, sitting in the dark of my garage, drinking flat beer, making a mental list of everyone who owed the commander favors, and everyone who didn't. Because if I was going to take this public, I couldn't do it alone. I needed a witness. Or better yet, a mirror. Her name was Deborah Collins. She was Franklin's wife. They'd been married 31 years, ever since he came back from his second tour. She'd put up with more than most, judging by the whispers around town. Frank had cheated before. Everyone knew it. Quietly, of course. He was a decorated vet, the hall's longest-standing president. No one called him out. They just avoided the topic at church socials and laughed it off at the bar. But Deborah wasn't stupid. She knew. And I had a feeling that, like me, she'd just been waiting for the right moment. I reached out carefully. Not through a letter. Not by phone. I ran into her at the grocery store. We both reached for the same jar of instant coffee. She looked up and smiled, polite as ever. I said, "Deborah, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Private." She blinked, then glanced around. "Can't be more private than the canned goods aisle." "Not here," I said. "Would you be willing to meet me for coffee?" She tilted her head, trying to read me. "Terry, what's this about?" "It's about Franklin," I said. "And Lorna." Her smile cracked. That was all the confirmation I needed. We met the next morning at the diner on Jefferson, the one with yellow booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked since 2011. I got there early. Deborah showed up in sunglasses and a ball cap, like she was heading into a war zone. In a way, she was. She ordered black coffee, no sugar. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were 3 photographs. All grainy, but clear enough. One showed Lorna's hand on Franklin's thigh. One showed them leaving the hall together an hour after poker night had supposedly ended. And the third was the killer, both of them in his office, door half closed, Lorna's heel visibly off her foot. Deborah looked at them one by one. Then she sighed. Deep. Quiet. "I already knew," she said. "But seeing it makes it harder to lie to myself." I didn't say anything. She pushed the photos back. "So what do you want from me?" "Just the truth," I said. "And maybe a little backup." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "You plan on torching them at the gala?" "Not them," I said. "Him." Deborah sipped her coffee and stared out the window for a long time. Then she told me what I didn't know. "Franklin's been skimming from the hall fund for years," she said. "He rerouted donations through a dummy nonprofit his cousin set up. Called it Veterans for Outreach. There's no office. No services. Just a P.O. box." My hands clenched. "You have proof." "I have copies of the tax records. They come to the house." "Why haven't you said anything?" "I did," she said quietly. "To the state auditor. But without witnesses or a paper trail, they didn't move. Franklin's protected. He's got friends on every board and council in a 30-mile radius. Until now." She nodded, just once. "You exposed the affair," she said. "I'll handle the rest." The gala was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday in September. Dress code, semi-formal. Event, cocktails, buffet dinner, slideshow, speeches. It was the hall's biggest fundraiser in its most public face. Lorna bought a new dress 2 weeks in advance. Navy blue. Fitted. You going to wear that to church too? I asked flatly. She looked surprised. No, just the gala. Figured as much. She narrowed her eyes. You okay? Never better. The night of the event, the hall looked almost respectable. They'd hung bunting across the entrance. Hired a caterer. Even rented a DJ who only played patriotic hits and 90s country. I wore my old service jacket. Still fit, more or less. Lorna looked gorgeous, but fake. In that way you only notice after the love's gone. She smiled for everyone. Touched my arm in public. Played the doting wife. It made me sick. Inside, the walls were lined with framed photos from the past 2 decades. Old newspaper clippings. Members shaking hands. Flags folded. Ribbons cut. In the far back, a stage had been set for the main speeches. Franklin was set to speak at 8. He never made it to the microphone. At 7:50, I approached Deborah, who stood near the punch bowl in a simple black dress and pearls. You sure? I asked. She nodded. I stepped onto the stage, tapped the mic once. The room turned quiet. I'm sorry to interrupt, I began, but I think it's time we stop clapping for ghosts. A few people chuckled, unsure. I looked straight at Deborah, then at Franklin. Some of you know me. Some of you don't. My name's Terry Dobson. I helped build this hall 20 years ago. I bled for this flag. I buried 2 friends who wore it. And I've stayed silent long enough. You could feel the tension buckle. I held up one of the photos. This is my wife. That's your commander. Gasps. Lorna froze, face pale. Franklin dropped his glass. You want to celebrate service? Start with honesty. Start with respect. Because this hall doesn't belong to Franklin Dale. It belongs to all of us. The room was dead silent. And then Deborah stepped forward. Franklin, she said, loud and clear. You're under investigation for misuse of nonprofit funds. And thanks to the truth Terry finally forced into the light, the state has what it needs. Franklin opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Just the smallest, slowest collapse of a man who thought he'd never be caught. Lorna followed me out of the hall. She tried to speak, to cry, to plead. I got in my truck and pulled away. Didn't say a word. Didn't look back. She was still standing there when I turned the corner. The Sunday after the gala, the hall was locked. Not just shut, locked. Lights off. Gates closed. Security sign posted on the glass door that read, temporarily closed for internal audit. By order of the Bayfield Board of Trustees. That sign said more than 1,000 whispers ever could. Franklin Dale was finished. And so was I. I slept in the guest room that night. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stomach sharing a bed with someone who made betrayal look casual. Lorna tried to knock, twice. Once at 10:03 p.m. Again at 2:17 a.m. I didn't answer either time. Instead, I laid there on a stiff mattress under an old wool blanket and stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. The Thursday nights, the phone call she took in the laundry room, the smell of cologne that wasn't mine. It all clicked in hindsight. All the puzzle pieces I'd brushed aside. I wasn't blindsided. I was willingly blind. There's a difference. Monday morning, the fallout started. I stopped by the auto shop early. My name was still painted across the glass door, Terry's transmission and tune-up, but for once, I didn't unlock it. Instead, I walked next door to the Bayfield Gazette. It's a small office. 2 desks. 1 fax machine. A young editor named Riley Vaughn who used to mow my lawn when he was 12. He stood when he saw me. Mr. Dobson? I've got a story, I said. He blinked. You're the Terry Dobson? From the gala? I nodded and handed him a manila folder. Inside, the 3 photos, a copy of Deborah's tax documents, and a handwritten summary of what we'd found. Can I quote you? He asked. Every word. You sure? I looked him in the eye. Let the town decide who deserves this hall. Not Franklin. He nodded slowly, then reached for his recorder. That afternoon, Lorna finally broke. She was waiting on the porch when I got home. Puffy eyes, cardigan sleeves pulled down over her hands. I messed up, she said. I didn't sit down. Why him? She looked away. I don't know. He made me feel seen. You were seen every day for 22 years. No, she said, voice low. I was tolerated. That one hit like a nail to the chest. Tolerated. I scoffed. I put your name on every account, every decision, every part of this life we built. And somewhere along the way, she said, we stopped talking. Because you were lying. Silence. She started crying. Quiet tears. The kind that expect a hug. But I didn't move. I'm not here to fix this, I said. Just to end it clean. Her chin trembled. What does that mean? I'm moving out. You'll hear from my lawyer. Tuesday morning, the Gazette dropped on driveways across Bayfield. The front page headline, in bold. Commander under fire, fraud, affair, and the fall of Bayfield's Veterans Hall. Underneath, 2 photos, including the one of Franklin and Lorna leaving the hall together, arms brushing. The story laid it all out. The slush fund, the dummy nonprofit, the cozy Thursday rendezvous. Riley kept it professional, but the facts spoke louder than any editorial ever could. That evening, my phone lit up. Ed Granger called first. Son, he said, you just did what no one else had the guts to. Then came Stan from the bar. Then Hank. Then Joe. Then Mark. The poker night regulars. They weren't mad. They were grateful. Turns out, plenty of folks had suspected something rotten was festering under the hall's polished plaques and flag cases. They just needed someone to say it out loud. Franklin made one last desperate move. Wednesday, he stood on the steps of the courthouse flanked by his lawyer, waving papers and claiming the story was political slander and a coordinated attack. He tried to turn it into a veterans' rights issue, said the investigation was disrespectful to the flag. But no one was buying it, especially not Deborah. She held a press conference the next day, right in front of the town's war memorial. She stood tall, wearing the same pearls from the gala. My husband, she said calmly, has disgraced not only his oath to service, but his vow to our family. I gave him 31 years. And now I'm giving the truth to the people. She handed over the full tax record to the auditor's office, and 2 hours later, federal agents paid Franklin a visit. Lorna texted me 3 times that week. Please talk to me. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I miss our home. I didn't respond. I'd moved into a small rental on the edge of town. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a fridge that whined, and a front window that faced nothing but gravel and silence. But it was mine, and it was honest. That Friday, I walked by the hall again. The sign was still up. Closed. The mural outside had started to fade, the blue and the flag now more like gray. But on the front steps was something new. A single folded note. It read, Mr. Dobson, I don't know you, but thank you. My dad was turned away from the hall 2 years ago after raising concerns. You gave him his pride back. Emily S. I sat down on the steps and let that sink in. Because revenge feels good, but respect lasts longer. I didn't go near the hall for 3 weeks after the story broke. Couldn't do it. Every time I drove past First Street, I'd glance at that shuttered building, the one where we drank, laughed, remembered names of men long gone, and feel a knot crawl up my throat. The windows were dark. The once proud mural was chipped now, like a flag caught in the wind too long. But I wasn't ready to pick up a paintbrush yet. Some things had to sit in silence for a while. It was Stan McKenzie who came knocking. Stan was a Korean War vet, built like a barn door, with fingers that looked like they could still crush cinder blocks. He'd been one of the hall's original charter members and had worn that status like a second set of dog tags ever since. He showed up at my shop early Tuesday morning, just as I was closing up a carburetor case. Got a minute, Terry? He asked, pulling his cap off. I nodded and wiped my hands on a rag. He stepped inside and looked around like he hadn't seen the place in years. Maybe he hadn't. Back in the day, everyone came here. These days, folks like to pretend their engines came pre-anointed. I'll shoot straight, he said. We're trying to reopen the hall. I raised an eyebrow. Already. He nodded. The new board met last night. Voted to freeze all current member accounts and re-audit every last purchase going back 10 years. That'll take time. That's why we need someone who knows where the bones are buried. He looked at me square. We want you on the new board. Secretary, if you're willing. I leaned back against the workbench, stared at the motor, thought about what it meant. Stan, I didn't bring that mess to light so I could wear a badge. I just wanted the truth out. I know, he said. That's exactly why we want you. I didn't give him an answer that day, but I thought about it all week. Every time I passed the hall, every time I ran into one of the guys at the grocery store or hardware lot who nodded and said, appreciate what you did, Terry. But what got me, in the end, wasn't a handshake. It was a picture. It arrived in the mail on Friday. No return address. Just a manila envelope with my name written in blocky, old-school print. Inside was a photo. It was me, circa 2001, sitting in the front row at the hall's grand opening. My youngest son, Bobby, was on my lap, maybe 3 years old, playing with the brim of my hat. Next to me was Franklin, back when he still smiled without rehearsing it. On the back, written in pencil, "We built this place with calloused hands. Let's rebuild it with clean ones." A friend. I knew what I had to do. The following week, I stepped back into the hall for the first time since the gala. The air still had that faint smell of varnish and dust, but the silence was louder. Gone were the plaques of Commander Dale. Someone had taken them down. The photos, too. All that remained was the wall of names, veterans from every war since World War II, and the bar, wiped clean but empty. Stan greeted me at the door with a binder and a key. "Meeting's in 10, he said. "Time to get to work." The new board was small, 5 of us. Stan, Linda Cortez, Air Force, Gulf 91, Eddie Franks, Marines, retired, Vera Holloway, Gold Star widow, and me. Our goal: restore the hall. Not just the budget and bylaws, the spirit of it. The community. The belief that it was more than a place to drink beer and tell war stories. It had to become sacred again. We started small. Removed the hidden bar inventory Franklin had tucked away. Dug into the financials, which were worse than we thought. Tens of thousands of dollars routed through dead-end accounts. We found invoices with no matching services. Consultants that never existed. Events that were never held. And we reported every last one. The town noticed. The Gazette ran a follow-up article. Hall reopens with new board, new mission. We held a public town hall meeting that drew nearly 80 residents. Most had never set foot in the building before. Linda gave a short speech. "This isn't just a veterans club anymore. It's a place for service, community, education, and remembrance." The applause shook the floorboards. That night, I stood behind the old bar and poured punch into a paper cup for a 9-year-old kid whose grandpa served in Korea. I looked down and said, "Your granddad ever bring you here before?" "No," he said. "But now he wants to." One person who didn't come back was Lorna. She sent a formal apology letter to the board. Said she regretted what happened, and that she respected the hall too much to show her face now. I didn't reply. She'd moved in with her sister 2 counties over. We were finalizing the separation paperwork quietly. Mutual split, no legal fights. We didn't have kids, so that made it easier. Or maybe just cleaner. Truth is, I didn't miss her the way I thought I would. What I missed was what I thought we had. There's a difference. On Veterans Day, we hosted a memorial breakfast. Vera read the names of all the town's fallen. Stan raised the flag, and I stood in front of the new honor wall, freshly painted, with gold trim, and nailed up the newest frame. It was a black and white photo of a young man. Franklin Dale. Yes, him. Because as much as I hated what he'd become, I couldn't deny what he once was. He had served. And that part, the young man in uniform, before the lies, before the power, deserved to be remembered. Not for him, but for the record. For truth. After the crowd left, I stood there alone, staring at the wall, until Stan stepped beside me and said, "You did the right thing." I nodded. Then we locked the doors. Clean this time. And we left. It was late February when the snow finally melted off Main Street, and with it came a kind of strange peace. Bayfield was always quiet, but this year it felt quieter. The storm of gossip, whispers, and broken loyalties had passed. Folks had stopped talking about Lorna and Franklin. The hall was running again, slow but steady. Poker nights came back, but now they ended before midnight, and someone always cleaned the tables. There were new faces, too, younger vets just back from Iraq and Afghanistan. I made it a point to remember their names, ask questions, listen more than I spoke. Not all of them stayed long, but the ones who did, they mattered. I didn't think I'd ever go back to a normal life, but that spring, it felt like I was getting close. Until she showed up. It was a Wednesday morning. I was working the front desk at the shop, flipping through invoices, when I saw the reflection in the front glass. A woman, mid-30s, long coat, stiff shoulders. I didn't recognize her at first. Not until she stepped inside and said, "Mr. Dobson?" I looked up. It took me half a second. And then my stomach dropped. Because I had seen her before. At the gala. Standing beside Franklin. Wife number 2. The first Mrs. Dale had passed years ago. But this woman, her name was Madeline, had married Franklin just after the Iraq surge. They didn't have kids. She worked for the regional banking office. And until that day, I hadn't seen or heard from her since the night I aired the affair. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice tight. I nodded slowly. Yeah, come on back. We sat in my office, 2 chairs between us, the smell of old oil and burned coffee in the air. She didn't touch the drink I offered. Instead, she pulled out a small folder and placed it on my desk. What's this? I asked. Final charges, she said. Federal indictment. Embezzlement. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. Tampering with nonprofit records. They added 2 more counts last month. I blinked. You're serious. They have everything. Thanks to Deborah's original tax copies and your photos, they were able to prove a pattern. Franklin. She nodded. Facing up to 12 years. I leaned back. It should have felt satisfying. Maybe even victorious. But all I felt was tired. How'd you find me? She smiled faintly. You're the only Dobson who still runs a shop with their name on it. Fair enough. She hesitated, then said something that threw me sideways. He's asking to see you. I stared at her. Come again. Franklin. He's in holding until the arraignment. He asked if you'd visit. Said he has something to say. I laughed, dry and bitter. He had plenty of time to say it before now. I'm not here to convince you, she said. Only to deliver the message. I didn't respond. She stood. I've filed for divorce, she said flatly. I stayed longer than I should have, but I thought you deserved to know. You were right about him. All of it. She walked to the door, paused, and added, don't let him spin it. Whatever he wants to say, make sure he says it straight. And then she was gone. That night, I stood on my porch with a beer and stared out at the tree line. The wind had shifted, warmer now, less bite in the air. I thought about going. Not because I wanted closure, but because I wanted truth. I'd spent a year uncovering his lies. Now I wanted to hear him speak without a podium. I wanted to look the man in the eye who burned down the Hall's legacy for the sake of lust, ego, and a padded account. So the next morning, I made the call. Franklin was being held in the county jail 2 towns over. Not a prison, not yet. Just a white brick building with reinforced glass and the smell of bleach clinging to the walls. They brought him into the visiting room in cuffs. He looked smaller than I remembered. Less commander, more civilian. Hair thinner, beard grown and patchy. He sat across from me, chain rattling when he adjusted. Terry, he said. I waited. He licked his lips. Didn't expect you to come. You asked. He gave a sad little chuckle. Yeah, that was stupid. Long pause. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness, he said. That's not what this is. Good, I said. Because you won't get it. He nodded. Then, for the first time, he looked me in the eye. I saw something in you I didn't have, he said. The way people actually liked you. Trusted you. I used to think respect meant fear. But you made people feel seen. I said nothing. You embarrassed me that night, he added. Not as much as you embarrassed yourself. He grunted. Fair. Another pause. I didn't love her, he said. Lorna. It was just control. Habit. You used her, I said. I used everyone. He looked down. They said I might be out in 7 with good behavior. I stood. That's not my concern. He looked up. Why did you come? I hesitated. Then I said, because I wanted to see what regret looked like. Not for me. For the guys whose names hang on that wall. He blinked fast. You'll never touch that hall again, I said. But we'll make sure it stands. He nodded. And I walked out. Didn't look back. The next poker night, I told the guys what happened. Didn't dramatize it. Didn't offer quotes. Just said, he knows he lost. That's all that matters. They clinked bottles, nodded, and moved on. That's the thing about good men. They don't need blood to call it justice. Just the truth. A week later, I got another note in the mail. No return address. Same handwriting. Just one line. This time, we'll do it right. Underneath was a photo of the new honor board being installed. Veterans from every branch, every war, finally named. Franklin's name wasn't on it. But neither was mine. And that's how it should be. Because legacy isn't about the names etched into plaques. It's about the hands that lift the hammer, and the ones who refuse to look away when the nails go in crooked. The divorce was finalized in early April. No yelling. No court battle. Just a short meeting at the lawyer's office where we both signed our names like we were closing on a house we'd grown tired of living in. Lorna wore gray slacks and a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I wore my work jacket and the quiet weight of everything she'd broken. When we stood to leave, she looked at me and said, "You'll be okay." "I already am," I said. We shook hands. No hugs. No dramatic last words. She walked one way. I walked the other. And just like that, 23 years ended in the time it takes to drink half a cup of bad office coffee. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the one after either. Grief had already come and gone. In the garage, on poker nights, in the flicker of late-night headlights across an empty kitchen. I'd already mourned the version of her I used to love. What remained was just paperwork. The hall was different now. Not just structurally. Though we'd fixed the back door, repainted the meeting room, and even replaced the old, crooked flagpole, but spiritually. People showed up early and stayed late. Young vets, Gold Star moms, high schoolers working on their civics hours. Linda had organized a Wednesday night speaker series. Vera hosted potlucks. Eddie, gruff as ever, ran community repairs out of the old storage shed. And me? I handled the ledger. The same books Franklin once used to hide checks, I now used to track $10 donations from folks dropping by after church. Every dollar recorded. Every penny counted. No more secrets. One afternoon, I was locking up after a community cleanup when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Deborah. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, her hair tied back, face free of makeup, still the strongest woman I'd seen since my mother's funeral. "Thought I'd find you here," she said. "Didn't know I had a reputation for overworking," I replied. She smiled and stepped inside with me. We sat in the lounge. "I saw Franklin," she said, "before his sentencing. How'd that go?" "Like you'd expect. Lots of half-truths and backtracking." She looked out the window. "I don't know if he ever really loved anything, Terry. Not even the hall. Then he never deserved it." She nodded. "Thank you for showing me I wasn't crazy." "You weren't." She stood after a while. Before leaving, she said something I hadn't expected. "You rebuilt something. You know that, right? Not alone. Still, some men burn things down. Some build. Not many do both and survive." And then she was gone. In May, we held the first Veterans Hall Memorial Picnic. Families brought blankets. Kids ran around with pinwheels and paper flags. Someone rigged a Bluetooth speaker to play Johnny Cash and Toby Keith. I sat at a table with Stan and Eddie, flipping burgers and handing out chips while the local pastor gave a brief blessing. Midway through the afternoon, a boy, maybe 7, walked up and asked, "Are you the guy who saved the hall?" I looked at him, then at his dad standing nearby, hand on the boy's shoulder. "I just reminded people who it belonged to," I said. The boy nodded solemnly, like I'd just taught him something his textbooks never could. That night, I stood alone in the meeting room. The new honor board gleamed behind me. No gold, no marble, just wood and names. Real names. Names of those who served. Names of those who never came home. Names that hadn't been added in over a decade until now. I looked at the last name we'd engraved that week. Sergeant Natalie Pierce. Afghanistan. 2008. She'd been forgotten. A paperwork mix-up. No one had caught it until her cousin reached out after reading the Gazette article. We fixed it. Because this version of the hall didn't forget. I thought about Lorna sometimes. Not with bitterness. Just distance. She moved to Kentucky, I heard. Got a part-time job as a dental assistant. Didn't remarry. Didn't reach out again. And that was fine by me. Not every story ends with a confrontation. Some just end. And I was okay with that. The last Friday of every month, we did something new. We called it Final Salute, a short candlelight moment for any service member tied to someone in our town. Didn't matter how long ago they passed. If someone remembered their name, we honored it. At the first one, maybe 10 people came. By June, it was 40. By August, we ran out of candles. The last thing I'll tell you is this. On the wall behind the meeting room door, there's a small plaque now. Just one sentence. No names. It says, "Integrity isn't loud, but it never disappears." I didn't carve it. Didn't suggest it. Someone just added it one day. And maybe that's the best ending I could ask for. No spotlight. No revenge speech. No confetti after the fall. Just a place rebuilt. A truth respected. A town made whole again. Not because of me, but because enough people finally said, enough. And meant it. The end. Subscribe to the channel